I have been surprised by the response to the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, but the more I've talked about it, the less surprised I have become. Are you surprised at all?
I'm not surprised at all, James. It's been absolutely apparent that the Trump administration is gunning for all of the late-night TV hosts. They were able successfully to pick off Stephen Colbert on CBS, his program wrapping up now next summer. And last night, of course, it was the turn of Jimmy Kimmel, the former host of the Oscars. Last year, the host of his own program every single night on ABC, and he has now been suspended indefinitely. Let's go back to the root of Mr. Kimmel's original sin, an excerpt from a monologue that he made on his program only on Monday night.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Now, you can argue that those comments by Mr. Kimmel were irresponsible. You can also certainly argue that they were journalistically not entirely accurate, given that then, as now, we still do not fully understand the motivation of Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old who is accused of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But did they rise to the level of celebrating the killing of Charlie Kirk, which previously, of course, had been what the Trump administration was saying was no longer acceptable or tolerable, even though in the United States, political free speech of all kinds, even hate speech, is covered by blanket protections under the country's First Amendment. Well, the sign of shifting ground also happened earlier this week when the Attorney General Pam Bondi took to Fox News with this admonition for America's private and publicly owned employers.
And employers, you have an obligation to get rid of people. You need to look at people who are saying horrible things, and they shouldn't be working with you.
So horrible things suddenly became the new bar that everybody had to avoid articulating. And the final reason why there's no surprise about this is because as he left the White House to head to the UK for his state visit, Donald Trump stopped to take a question from John Karl, the excellent White House correspondent with ABC News. And as you will hear, he made a direct threat to the network that carried Jimmy Kimmel's program.
And what do you make Pam Bondi saying she's going to go after hate speech? Is that, I mean, a lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
She'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC.
And now, of course, even while he is on British soil, the President of the United States has taken to his social media account to celebrate Mr. Kimmel's indefinite suspension as great news for America and to indicate that now he wants NBC, the last remaining of the big three networks that has not taken any action against their late-night hosts, he wants them to go after Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, their two stars of late night. There is no way late-night comedy and late-night talk shows, a fixture of America's late-night viewing habits going back 60 years, there's no way that those programs survive this administration.
Hard for some British listeners to appreciate the sort of iconic status in US culture of those late-night chat shows. It's weird, isn't it? Because I read it slightly differently, actually. I didn't think Jimmy Kimmel was suggesting that the shooter was a member or the suspect was a member of Donald Trump's movement. I just thought he was saying that they are moving heaven and earth to portray him as anything but that. It was just sort of taking that option off the table. But I guess that both interpretations work. On the one hand, you've got the sort of comically thin skin of the most powerful man in the world. But on the other, and some of my callers have raised these points today, you've got the stench of McCarthyism now engulfing much of the country. You've got this idea of not even Reds under the beds, but comedians playing clips of Trump himself being the offence. Actually, here is your president being the offence, not even offering much by way of opinion. How is American media responding? I mean, Jimmy Kimmel, obviously, I don't imagine was particularly worried about that monologue when he delivered it. He wouldn't have thought it was going to have anything like the response that it has. But anybody thinking of doing anything that the White House might look askance at tomorrow, is going to think twice before putting pen to paper or pressing record on the cameras.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Jimmy Kimmel would have been naive to think that those comments weren't going to cause a storm, but he might not necessarily have thought that they would be career-ending.
He wouldn't have thought his own employers would bend the knee in this way.
Well, it is his employers bending the knee in the face of fury on the part of some of the largest groups of local stations in the United States. And look, it's big business that ultimately is behind this decision. Nexstar, which is the largest owner of local television stations in America, many of which are affiliated with ABC and carry Mr. Kimmel's program, is trying to buy Tegna, another big group of local stations. They will become far and away a behemoth in the United States, piercing the current limits on how many local stations any single group is allowed to own. For that, they need the approval of the Federal Communications Commission. The FCC is now headed by Brendan Carr, a pro-Trump employee, appointee, who yesterday immediately saw in Jimmy Kimmel's monologue the opportunity to attack ABC on behalf of his boss, the president. Actually said to a far-right podcaster yesterday, "We can do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way." That was his message to ABC. Next, it was encouraging the local stations to rise up and say, we're not putting Jimmy Kimmel on the air anymore. Nexstar took that move, which led Disney's top executives, including Bob Iger, to meet late in the afternoon yesterday. And even though multiple reports now suggest that they thought what Jimmy Kimmel said was completely covered by free speech protection and was defensible, they bent the knee because they simply did not want to incur the wrath of the Donald Trump administration going forward, finding themselves in the position that CBS is now in, with a bias monitor placed in the CBS newsroom. That was one of the prices CBS chose to pay. Its new owners chose to pay as a result of the merger between Paramount and another large company here in the US. So this is open season on broadcasters here. And as he's indicated in that social media message posted today from the UK, Donald Trump, on this issue of freedom of speech in the United States, is not going to yield, even as he argues that free speech is being rolled back in the UK.
There is no freedom of speech in the United States today.
There are certainly very, very heavy constraints on freedom of speech in the United States today. I mean, I am still allowed to sit behind this microphone and say what I think I need to be saying, report what I think I need to be reporting about what is taking place here. And there are certainly many other parts of the world, and I've worked in several of them, where nobody enjoys that kind of right. But there is also no doubt, James, that free speech is in unconstitutional retreat here, and that's the real issue. The Constitution is being ridden roughshod over by this administration, and so far all of those constitutional guardrails that we wondered during the first term of Donald Trump, could they withstand the Trumpian onslaught? Well, they kind of sort of did during the first term. This time round, he's simply bulldozing them.
And just by way of illustration, I know you will know this, the chap that MSNBC got rid of for a relatively innocuous comment was a former George W. Bush or George Bush staffer. And David Frum, who used to write speeches for George W. Bush, has said to CNN earlier today, this is not cancel culture. Oh, actually, we can hear it.
There's only one thing that matters. There's only one thing that matters. We had a threat of retaliation by a government official for someone not pronouncing government-commanded speech. There was an order from the state about what people must say. Jimmy Kimmel did not say that, and his corporation was threatened with consequences by a government official. This is not cancel culture because it's not culture. It's state repression. It's an order from the government. Here's the script you must read. If you do not read it, you will be taken off the air. Jimmy Kimmel didn't read it. He was taken off the air. This cannot be. Because he's a comedian, there'll be people who say maybe we shouldn't take this as seriously. But here's the comparison I would suggest. When Paul Pelosi was brutally attacked, many, unfortunately, including the son of the former President Trump, made light of it. A terrible thing, heartbreaking, a terrible attack on an 82-year-old man. Imagine if the Biden administration had given a script and said, this is what everybody must say about Paul Pelosi. And if you don't say it, we will bring pressure to bear on your parent corporation to fire you. Greg Gutfeld at Fox, you're not sad enough about Paul Pelosi. You're not saying what we command to be said about Paul Pelosi. Therefore, unless Fox fires you, we are going to bring regulatory havoc to bear on the parent corporation.
And that is a former speechwriter for the Republican president, George W. Bush. A final question. I've asked you this sporadically since January. Are you worried about your own livelihood?
I'm not worried about my own livelihood. I'm concerned that the ability of reporters here, whether they are domestic or international, truly to engage in the time-honoured ability to report in an objective fashion, to look at what's taking place here, and to say, well, hang on a second, that's very odd, that's very unusual, that's a real shift in the trajectory and direction of a country that we have all traditionally sort of, if not celebrated, certainly accepted the notion that America wanted to project itself as a shining beacon of democracy, the shining city on the hill. I mean, that is clearly, absolutely being diminished every single day here, and has been since the president returned to power in January. So, I mean, clearly the concern has to be that ultimate limits will be placed on the ability of people to speak freely here. We are not there yet, and, you know, I think that many people will choose to continue engaging in their various professions and their crafts up until the point at which that simply becomes impossible.